Brian Davis of Indiana, tell us why you're upset.
I'm just going to state the fact there was a company got a cease and desist order last December from the Federal Trade Commission, which is part of the United States government. I suspected it through the years, didn't really say anything. And then other people are now coming forward and people are being interviewed. And I heard an interview the other day where an agent, a young lady, lost like tens of, I don't remember what the dollar amount was, but it was substantial. And I had been in the business for a while. So when I was with them, I didn't really buy any of their leads or whatnot. Other people did, and I'm starting to hear stories about it. And
Brian, I believe you heard the Tyra interview. Her last name is Hamilton, Tyra Hamilton whistleblower interview. What was your take on her interview?
Well, she had made sales with them, and it just me sounded like there was a lead system in place that sort of outdated. And then when the pandemic hit, maybe the lead companies ran into problems and just started generating who knows what. That was my take on it.
She recorded the bigwigs in the company specifically talking about the integrity deal. The person who gets the integrity deal pockets, let's say $7 million, and his or her job for FFL is now to push leads, to be a lead seller on the team.
Like I said, when I was with Family First Life, it seemed like a market. Like that was their core, was selling leads. And at the time, I didn't really understand how leads were produced. But after listening to recent interviews, I do now. So who knows?
In the Greg Birch whistleblower interview, where he specifically talks about each lead being sold to multiples of agents and thousands of agents losing thousands of dollars and not making one sale. What was your impression of the authenticity of Greg Birch?
I believe him. I personally know that leads from the past were actually resold. I don't know how much I want to say, but I know that leads that had already been sold to an agent with an IMO, the lead got bought from an agent, they made a sale, and then the lead was still passed down. I won't say who bought it, but someone bought the lead. I know this for a fact 100%. Obviously, there's money involved with buying the lead, but then that individual had to take time to call that appointment, drive to the east side of Indianapolis. I think it was like 30th and it was on 30th Street somewhere right off 70 over by Shadeland Avenue, only to find out that an agent had just made a sale. And then at the time that person didn't know, but still made the sale. But then the first agent that made the sale called the second person that made the sale and was like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And then the second agent was just like, "You know what? Just keep it. It's not even worth it." So
how many of those interviews did you see on one by one person saying they spent $500, $1,600, $400? In the case of the woman named M8 Mog, quite a bit more. In the case of the Guy McCord of Texas, $3,000. The gentleman from Minnesota, $9,000, no sales. How many of those interviews did you see?
I listened to about 6 of them, and then I saw bits and pieces of them when I could. I mainly listened to them, and there were about, I would say, 6.
Would you say vis-a-vis new insurance agents coming into Family First Life, would you consider Family First Life a legitimate business?
The FTC doesn't think
The
so.
FTC specifically went into lying or exaggerating to get people in the system. The FTC specifically did not go into what happens after they come into the system all excited to make $250,000 a year. You listen to those interviews on the NAIP playlist, so you have more of an insight than the FTC does because you're seeing actual people telling their stories. In addition, seeing Greg Birch as well as Tyra Hamilton, who are upper level managers in that system, giving you the inside. So your insight is actually valuable after having this information.
Yeah, facts for the facts.
Regarding the class action lawsuit that is spearheaded by Greg Birch.
I went through most of it. I didn't go through it word by word, but I came through it, and then like page 1, 2, 3, and 4, I read every line.
Specifically, it delved into lead fraud. Family First Life earns between $3 and $4 million a week on lead. It's a revenue or profits, I'm not sure. It delved into trying to get releases.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't around when all that was going on, but if it happened, I'm not surprised. And from what I've heard, yeah, they had to sit out 6 months, which a lot of people have the money to do it. A lot of other people don't.
My take on this, if one joins a class action lawsuit, specifically, they're only asking for the money back on leads, which may be a couple of $1,000s. You said earlier in this interview that you really didn't spend money on leads with FFL, but the last interview you did with me, you mentioned you spent, maybe my memory's better than yours, which is hard to believe, $1,800, if I recall. So which one was it?
I don't remember.
It was one of those. Did you spend any money on leads with FFL?
Yeah.
I recall speaking to Robert Taylor of Minnesota to do an interview. He didn't want to do specifically a face-to-face interview because it's embarrassing to say you lost $9,000 on leads and didn't make one sale, which is understandable. I completely understand where you're coming from. We'll just leave it at one of those two is accurate. You did tell me previous to this call that seems that FFL is a two-pronged company. One part of the company is specifically geared to new agents to sell those people leads, and the other part is geared to offering contracts for people to sell insurance. Could you elaborate on that?
I mean, who knows? There's a lot of people that make a lot of money in the business. When I was around, there were a lot of new agents, and obviously the government, as their cease and desist order says, they were using fraudulent tactics to roll a lot of new people in, and then they were using false advertising to encourage new agents to, and I didn't buy into it, but spend their fortune basically to buy leads because
regret that I have to correct you. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, cease and desist did not talk in a iota about leads. It only talked about lying tactics to get them in.
Right.
Nothing to do with what happened afterwards. What is your opinion as per why they use these tactics, these lying advertisements to get people into their system?
I mean, there's a lawsuit out now spearheaded by Greg Birch about lead fraud, so we'll see if it'll get investigated, and if you get in trouble for lead fraud, it could be very bad for the losing side.
I personally spoke to the FFL attorney. The FFL attorney seemed not to be that worried about that class action lawsuit. And at the same token, I do know, because I personally am being sued for defamation, you could sue anyone, and that any person has to show up in court. If someone was a victim of lead fraud, or fraud of any type, and they happen to be in Hawaii, the company that did this, or the person who did this type of fraud happens to live in Maine. The person of Maine has to fly to Hawaii for this trial. As a general rule, when major corporations, you sign a contract, say if there's any dispute, it has to be in the home court of the company, such as Maine, and it goes through an arbitration, which is much more favorable for the defendant, because it costs, both sides have to come up with money to file to solve the dispute. With FFL, when you were with FFL, was there any contract determining the jurisdiction of any legal dispute?
Signed a bunch of paperwork when I came in. It was all online. I was just trying to get going as soon as possible because I needed to make sales. Didn't go through it. I should have. Yada yada yada. Life goes on.
I do recall seeing multiple videos from Sean Mikey stating that there's no contract whatsoever between you and FFL.
Right. They're advertising no contracts.
Based on the previous conversation where you did buy a couple of $1,000s of leads, I believe you mentioned 1,800. Theoretically, you could sue in your state courthouse in your local county, and the party which was perpetrated the fraud have to show up in your local county to defend him or herself.
Mike and I have known each other or about each other for the years, so I'm not planning on getting involved legally unless I'm required to, like being a witness like I am now. But if they go after me, I could. Hope it doesn't happen that way. I just sort of want to stay out of it.
Are you saying that you won't initiate a lawsuit against them, but you would counter lawsuit against them?
If they go after me, there will be consequences, but I just want to leave it alone. I know a lot of people from all over the insurance industry, and I don't want to get into the legal side of things.
Would you like to get the $1,800 back that you spent on supposed fresh leads that were replicated data?
I don't really care, to be honest.
You've been to more of these NAAIP 6-day per week video conference calls than anyone else. I believe you were at the call yesterday where two people mentioned they were victims of lead fraud from Family First Life. I guess that's a harsh word. They bought leads and it didn't pan out to what they expected. I believe that's a regular occurrence on these 6-day per week video conference calls. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Different name, different face. So the 20 or 30 videos that I have online on that YouTube playlist, you know that there's a lot more than those 20 or 30. Is that correct?
Yes.
A heck of a lot more.